You've probably met someone who never seems to learn from their mistakes. No matter how many times life gives them a reality check, they keep making the same poor decisions. They reject advice, dismiss facts, and act as if they know everything. Maybe you've even had moments like that yourself, where pride got in the way of growth. But here's the truth. Being wise isn't about having all the answers. It's about recognizing when you're wrong, when you need to change, and when to listen instead of assuming you already know. The ancient Stoics understood this better than anyone. To them, stupidity wasn't about intelligence. It was about resisting reality. A fool wasn't someone who lacked knowledge, but someone who refused to seek it. Take Marcus Aurelius, a Roman emperor with absolute power. He could have surrounded himself with people who praised his every word. Instead, he constantly reminded himself to stay humble, to question his own thinking, and to learn from others, even those he disagreed with. That's the kind of mindset that separates the wise from the foolish. Today, we're breaking down 6 signs of a person who refuses to grow. This isn't about pointing fingers at others. It's about making sure you don't fall into these traps yourself. Because the first step to wisdom is recognizing where you might be holding yourself back. If you're ready to see the world more clearly, make sure to like, share, and subscribe for more insights on mastering life. Let's begin. Sign number 1, lack of self-awareness. Have you ever met someone who constantly blames others for their problems? They never pause to consider that maybe, just maybe, the issue isn't the world around them, but themselves. This is the hallmark of someone who lacks self-awareness. They move through life blind to their own flaws, repeating the same mistakes, never understanding why things don't work out. And the worst part, they refuse to listen when someone tries to point it out. A person without self-awareness never stops to reflect on their actions, words, or decisions. Instead, they live on autopilot, reacting to life without any sense of introspection. They struggle to recognize their own biases, weaknesses, or even how they come across to others. This is why they often find themselves in the same conflicts, facing the same failures, unable to break free from destructive cycles. The Stoics believe that true wisdom begins with knowing oneself. Socrates once said, "The unexamined life is not worth living." Marcus Aurelius, one of the greatest Stoic emperors, constantly reminded himself to observe his own mind, to question his thoughts and behaviors. He kept a journal, not to impress others, but to hold himself accountable. He knew that if he didn't take responsibility for his own growth, no one else would. Lack of self-awareness can also show up as arrogance. Thinking you're always right, refusing to take feedback, or dismissing the perspectives of others. But the truth is, if multiple people are telling you the same thing about yourself, maybe it's time to listen. Seneca wisely noted, "A man is as unhappy as he has convinced himself he is." In other words, your suffering often comes from your own inability to see reality for what it is. So, how do you develop self-awareness? Start by questioning your own thoughts before questioning others. Keep a journal like Marcus Aurelius did. Ask yourself, what did I do well today? What could I have done better? Seek feedback from people you trust, not just those who tell you what you want to hear. And most importantly, pause before reacting. Instead of assuming you're right, consider the possibility that there's still more to learn. People who lack self-awareness remain trapped in their own ignorance, but those who cultivate it open themselves up to true wisdom, growth, and transformation. Which side do you want to be on? Sign number 2, a closed mind. Some people refuse to change their minds, no matter how much evidence is placed before them. They cling to outdated beliefs, dismiss new ideas, and reject anything that challenges their worldview. But what they fail to see is that a closed mind is a prison, one that keeps them trapped in ignorance. A fool mistakes stubbornness for strength, but true strength lies in intellectual humility, the ability to admit when you are wrong and learn from others. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus once said, "It is impossible to learn that which one thinks one already knows." This is why closed-minded people never grow. They believe they already have the answers, so they stop seeking knowledge. Consider the story of Zeno of Citium, the founder of Stoicism. He was once a wealthy merchant, but after a shipwreck destroyed his fortune, he found himself lost and directionless. Instead of clinging to his past identity, he sought wisdom. He studied under the greatest philosophers of Athens, absorbed their teachings, and transformed his misfortune into the foundation of a new philosophy. Had he been closed-minded, he would have spent his life bitter about his losses, never realizing that his greatest setback was actually his greatest opportunity. A closed-minded person, however, resists change. They argue not to learn, but to win. They dismiss new perspectives because they threaten their sense of self. This rigidity weakens them. The world is constantly evolving, and those who refuse to adapt are left behind. To avoid this trap, practice the Stoic art of listening. Ask yourself, am I rejecting this idea because it's truly wrong or because it challenges me? Seek out perspectives that differ from your own. Read books that challenge your thinking. Engage in discussions with people you disagree with. True wisdom is not about being right all the time. It's about being willing to learn. Sign number 3, constant blaming. A fool always finds someone else to blame. When they fail at work, it's their boss's fault. When a relationship ends, it's their partner's fault. When life doesn't go their way, it's the government, the economy, or bad luck. But Stoicism teaches that personal responsibility is the key to freedom. Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor and Stoic philosopher, faced endless challenges, wars, plagues, betrayals, but he never blamed others. Instead, he understood that while we cannot control everything that happens to us, we can always control how we respond. A person who constantly blames others gives away their power. If everything is someone else's fault, then nothing is within their control. They become passive victims of life, waiting for circumstances to change instead of taking action. This mindset leads to stagnation, bitterness, and ultimately failure. Contrast this with a wise individual, someone who, instead of blaming, asks, "What could I have done differently? How can I improve?" This mindset fosters growth. Seneca, another great Stoic, faced exile from Rome under false accusations. Instead of drowning in self-pity, he used the time to write and reflect, producing some of his greatest works. He didn't waste energy blaming his enemies. He focused on what he could control, his own thoughts and actions. If you catch yourself blaming others, pause and ask, is this truly beyond my control, or am I avoiding responsibility? The moment you stop blaming and start owning your choices, you reclaim your power. Life is not about what happens to you. It's about how you respond. Sign number 4, lack of empathy and consideration. An emotionally unintelligent person struggles to see beyond their own feelings and experiences. They dismiss the emotions of others, viewing them as weaknesses or unnecessary distractions. But what they fail to realize is that true wisdom isn't just about understanding the world. It's about understanding people. The Stoics believe that empathy and consideration are essential for a virtuous life. Marcus Aurelius, one of the greatest Stoic philosophers, wrote, "Whenever someone has done wrong to you, immediately consider what notion of good or evil they had in doing it. When you see that, you will feel compassion instead of astonishment or anger." This teaches us that by understanding the perspectives of others, we can respond with wisdom rather than judgment. A person lacking empathy, however, assumes their perspective is the only valid one. They dismiss others' struggles with phrases like, "Stop overreacting," or "I had it worse, so you should just deal with it." They fail to recognize that different people experience life in different ways. Consider the story of Cato the Younger, a Stoic known for his integrity. Despite his strong principles, he didn't impose them on others harshly. He understood that wisdom wasn't about forcing people to think like him. It was about guiding them through example. A fool, on the other hand, demands others conform to their views without considering different experiences or emotions. If you find yourself dismissing someone's feelings, pause. Ask yourself, am I truly listening or just waiting for my turn to speak? Empathy isn't about agreeing with everyone. It's about understanding where they're coming from. The more you cultivate this skill, the wiser and more respected you become. Sign number 5. Fear of change. Change is inevitable, yet many people resist it. Fearing the unknown more than the certainty of stagnation, they cling to old routines, outdated beliefs, and past versions of themselves, even when it's clear they need to evolve. The Stoics, however, saw change as not just necessary but beneficial. Marcus Aurelius famously wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." This means that challenges, changes, and obstacles are not roadblocks. They are the very things that help us grow. Resisting change is like trying to stop the tide. It's a battle you will always lose. A person who fears change often romanticizes the past. They say things like, "Back in my day, things were better," or "This is just the way I've always done it." They avoid learning new skills, ignore shifting realities, and refuse to adapt, even when their circumstances demand it. Look at Seneca's life. He rose to power in Nero's court, but, seeing the corruption around him, he chose to step away from wealth and influence. He didn't fight to cling to his old life. He embraced the change, using his time in isolation to write some of the most profound Stoic texts ever recorded. A fearful person would have desperately tried to maintain their position, even as the world shifted around them. If you catch yourself resisting change, ask, am I afraid of failure or am I afraid of growth? The more you lean into discomfort, the stronger and wiser you become. Growth is never easy, but it is always worth it. Sign number 6. Constant emotional reactivity. Have you ever met someone who instantly lashes out when things don't go their way? They explode in anger, panic at the slightest inconvenience, or let frustration dictate their words and actions. This kind of emotional reactivity reveals a lack of control, and according to Stoic philosophy, it's one of the greatest weaknesses a person can have. The Stoics believe that wisdom comes from mastering your emotions, not being controlled by them. Epictetus taught, it's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. Life will always throw challenges your way, but if you allow your emotions to dictate your response, you give away your power. A reactive person doesn't pause to reflect. If someone insults them, they fire back. If things don't go their way, they complain or act out. But what does this achieve? Nothing but regret. The wise person, on the other hand, takes a breath. They observe their emotions, recognize them, and choose their response carefully. Marcus Aurelius, despite being the most powerful man in Rome, never allowed his emotions to rule him. When he faced betrayals and political backstabbing, he didn't react in rage. He remained composed, reminding himself that external events don't define him, only his response does. If you find yourself constantly reacting, ask yourself, is this response helping or hurting me? Pause, reflect, train your mind to respond with reason rather than impulse. When you control your emotions, you control your life. Sign number 7. Talking more than listening. A fool speaks to be heard. A wise person speaks only when necessary. One of the most common traits of emotionally unintelligent people is that they talk too much, interrupting, dominating conversations, and refusing to listen. They believe they have all the answers. Yet ironically, their inability to listen shows just how little they truly understand. Epictetus gave a simple but powerful reminder. We have 2 ears and 1 mouth, so that we can listen twice as much as we speak. Yet many ignore this wisdom, treating conversations as opportunities to show off rather than to learn. They wait for their turn to speak, instead of truly hearing what others are saying. A person who talks excessively often assumes they are the smartest in the room. They interrupt, dismiss other viewpoints, and turn every conversation back to themselves. Imagine someone constantly cutting others off in a discussion, insisting they are right without considering another perspective. This behavior alienates people and prevents genuine learning. Seneca, a master of persuasion, understood the value of measured speech. He once wrote, "Speech that is restrained is better than speech that overflows." He knew that by listening first, he could respond with clarity and wisdom. This approach made him one of the most influential advisors in Roman history. If you catch yourself talking too much, pause. Ask yourself, am I speaking to impress or to understand? The more you listen, the wiser you become. And the wiser you become, the more people will actually want to hear what you have to say. Recognizing ignorance in others is easy. Recognizing it in ourselves, that takes true wisdom. But here's the good news. Awareness is a first step toward change. Marcus Aurelius once reminded himself, if anyone can refute me, show me I'm making a mistake or looking at things from the wrong perspective, I'll gladly change. This is the mindset of wisdom, the willingness to challenge ourselves, to reflect and to grow. Ask yourself honestly, have you ever blamed circumstances instead of taking responsibility? Have you ever reacted emotionally when a calm response would have served you better? Have you ever shut out a new idea because it made you uncomfortable? If so, that's not a failure. It's an opportunity. Wisdom isn't about never making mistakes. It's about recognizing them, learning from them, and choosing a better path. So, here's your challenge. Which of these traits have you noticed in yourself or others? Comment, listen more, speak less to show your commitment to wisdom. And if you found this insightful, subscribe for more Stoic lessons to help you navigate life with clarity and strength. Wisdom is a lifelong journey. Let's walk it together.